this upper room. You know, when I think back to the meal we just served, the Passover meal at the upper room, I can't help but to think how very strange and unusual it was. And even, were you here?
Yes, I was. Who
When
was
he took this master, they called him, this group's leader,
Yeah.
they called him Master and Lord. And were you here when he took a piece of our bread and broke it and told his men to eat it because it was his body broken for them? And then he took the cup of wine and he said, "Drink, for this is my blood." That was really weird.
Oh my, it certainly was. I've never seen anything like that before in my life. But you know, the atmosphere in the room was so very calm. That master was very gentle with his followers. There was one time though when things got a little riled up. When he stood up and he said, "One of you is going to betray me." Well, the young man named Peter jumped up. He got so upset from hearing that he jumped up and he said, "Master, never, I would never betray you. Why, I would die for you." Throughout it all, though, the master still remained calm.
Well, did you see, were you here when they were bickering about who was to be first?
Yeah, I saw that.
And then this master, in the middle of the meal, he gets up, puts a towel around him, takes this basin and water, and washes each of their feet. And he talks to them about masters and servants like us, and about his father and following him. Very unusual, very strange.
After he finished doing that, which I've never seen a leader of a group of men do this before, putting himself in the master's role, or in the servant's role, he returned to his seat and dipped a piece of the bread into some juice and handed it to the man sitting beside him. He leaned over and said something to that man, and I didn't hear what he said. But that man, after eating that piece of soft bread, stood up and rushed out of the room. In fact, he never did come back for the rest of the supper. Now, can you imagine leaving a fine supper like this? It must have been something extremely important.
It was very strange. But
It was
you know,
strange.
he's so unique. I've never heard anybody talk like that before. He spoke of a new covenant and how everyone was to love one another.
Wow, wouldn't that be the day when everybody loved one another?
Well, last night I was late getting home after serving that meal. So I took a shortcut through this Garden of Gethsemane or Mount of Olives. And you wouldn't believe what I saw. There was men sprawled out over here on the ground. They were sleeping. And a man came out from the woods toward them. And he said, "Arise, you are not supposed to be sleeping, you're supposed to be praying." I recognized that man. He was the master from that meal last night. He was, and
those were his men.
yes, that's right, that was that group of followers. And he started going back into the woods, so I followed him. There was something drawing about him. He was such a unique and benevolent man. So I didn't want him to see me, so I hid behind this tree. And I watched him, and he was going along to pray. And he was praying about having some cup passed before him. And then he was praying about taking that cup and drinking from it and following his Father's will. And do you know that he was praying with such intent and such emotion, he had blood dripping from his brow, like sweating. It was unreal. And then he came back to his men, and all of a sudden, there was a commotion from over this direction, and there were soldiers and chief priests with lanterns and weapons, and they all came toward him. And he said, "Whom do you seek?" And this master said, or he asked them, "Whom do you seek?" They said, "Jesus of Nazareth." sudden out from that same group comes this man. It was the man that left in the middle of the meal, remember?
It was him?
He stormed, yes.
With the chief priest?
Yes. And he came up to this Jesus, this master, and kissed him on the cheek and called him rabbi. Yeah.
What happened then?
It's terrible. They grabbed this Jesus and they took him and they were going to arrest him. But suddenly one of his men pulled out a sword. Oh my, here's the sword. He was wielding it, swinging it, and whack! He cut off one of the guard's ears. Ew, there's still had blood on it. Ew. But wonder of wonders, this Jesus of Nazareth came up and touched that guard's ear, and it was healed. It was like a miracle.
It was a miracle.
Unreal. It was a miracle.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. That master, that Jesus of Nazareth, he certainly is a unique person. I don't believe I've ever heard of anybody able to do those things. Well, I too am a little bit tired this morning because I woke up about an hour and a half before it was time for sunrise and looked out into my courtyard and my rooster was gone. Now, this being the Passover week, I know there's a lot of people in town, and I sort of feared that he may end up in a pot. Well, I decided I needed to get out and find that rooster. So I got my lantern, and I remembered that he liked to hang out over by the temple. There was a couple hens over there that he was friends with, and so that's where I headed, toward the temple. And as I went into the temple courtyard, even though it was pitch dark, I saw groups of men around fires. And I thought to myself, wow, something important's happening in the temple tonight. As I walked past one of the groups of men, I saw that Peter. Remember the guy that said, "Oh, Master, I will never betray you. I will die for you." As I walked past that group of people, I heard him saying, "I don't know him. I don't know who you're talking about. I've never met him before in my life." And then I saw my rooster, and he saw me, and he grew. And I glanced back at Peter, who was now sobbing uncontrollably on the ground. As I went over to pick up my rooster, out of the temple come running, yes, the man that you told me kissed the master, the man who left the dinner early, that same man came running out of the temple as fast as he could go, as if he had the Furies chasing after him. There was no one after him, but he come running, and he had a rope with him, and I thought, what is he up to? And so I decided I'd follow him, and so as fast as my little legs could carry me, I followed, and I had to stop under a tree and catch my breath. Oh, and just then he stopped under a tree up ahead. And as I watched, I noticed the end of his rope had a noose on it. And I saw him starting to swing his rope. And I thought, uh-oh, this can't be good. He must have done something really terrible to think of taking his life. And so I yelled, I don't know what caused me to yell this, but I said, "Sir, don't do that! Your rabbi will forgive you. Jesus forgives everyone. He's loving and kind. Don't do that." But he was so wrapped up in his guilt that I can't even bear to think of what he did. How can someone be that desperate and have no hope? Oh, that's terrible.
Well, the town sure is riled up today, but it is the day of our feast, the part of the feast where the crowd gets to release one of the prisoners. And it's surely crowded. And, oh, there's the Governor Pilate now, with two men in chains. One is Barabbas. It can't be. Surely they wouldn't want to release him. Barabbas, he's a rebel murderer, he's a rebel thief and murderer. He robbed my cousin's house and killed him and his family. I can't believe it. Jesus of Nazareth, why, he's not broken any laws. I can't imagine.